And I'm going to share the screen. And I'm going to go over here and do the thing about the sound. Anyway, so any comments or questions about the two modules we just finished? What do you think about this agreements piece? You ever thought about the scope of your trustworthiness? It affects everything in your life. And I think,
absolutely very important.
It's a bigger, thank you, Nico. It's a bigger question, but I think I'm always looking at sort of the simplest thing you can do. And one is just to commit to living in integrity. I wish our politicians did this more. And what's going to happen if you even do the 5-step process once? You will have a mindset shift that you will notice when you're entering agreements. I think the most dangerous thing here is when you enter agreements and you're not aware you're doing it, and others are. So I'm pretty rigorous about this. Junko and I both are good about this. And I actually had I may have mentioned this, some years ago, I dated for a couple of years a very attractive lady who was an astronomer. And on paper, we were a really good match, but I finally broke it off because she couldn't keep her agreements. And when you can't trust somebody, you can't be in relationship with them. Stephen Covey also says, broken agreements are at the heart of all broken relationships. So I think that's it. And I think the big key here is that you're going to break agreements. I mean, it happens. But I think that the real thing here is to renegotiate them. And in the 4D company, which had about, I don't know, 15, 20 independent contractors, we absolutely insisted on all the behaviors, and anyone that broke an agreement and didn't immediately reprocess it with the 5-step process was gone. And I want you to think about how relaxing it is to work with people that do what they say. Now you don't have to worry about it. So
just a side note, Charlie. Just a side note, that video comes back smiling about it with a guy falling forward with everybody standing behind him. And if when he's stand up from there and he's been asked about trust, he would say, but communicate in the right way, what trust is all about.
Yeah, that's all part of it. Yeah. There's a lot of nuance to all these things. I just like to see if we can find something that's straightforward. Any thoughts or comments about agreements? How do you guys do with your agreements? Did you do the exercise in the workbook?
No.
I didn't ask you to do it specifically, but we talked about it in the slide.
Yeah, and I did not do that. It's been one heck of a week. I also will own up to Nico and I did not do our exercise, and that was my fault. Nico reached out, so I'll apologize for that. But
so let's do the 5-step process.
I think that would be good. And just kind of from my end, part of the challenge is my work needs all of this. So I'm like trying to learn and apply all at once.
Yeah. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable here, but I think it's a good opportunity to demonstrate this.
Not at all. Not at all.
But the process, this is first thing, tell the truth. Nat, are you willing to do this?
Sure.
So what's the first thing you do?
So I broke my agreement, which was to do the role play with Nico.
Yep. Okay. And what happened?
Nico reached out. I saw his email and I never went back to it. So that was completely on me.
So go ahead and tell your story about, what happened with work and everything.
Sure. So yeah, work right now, we're actually today, in fact, later today, we're going to have what I call a come to Jesus meeting, a C to J, because we've got a lot of people that aren't they're breaking their agreements. I think a lot of people don't understand that they are making agreements and that they have
Yeah.
agreements
Mhm.
to be made. And so we're very siloed, and that's part of the problem is people just dump things over the wall and just wipe their hands and walk away. So it's just been a really crazy week of trying to figure out how to navigate the change that needs to occur effectively. And obviously 4D has been a big part of that. So when Nico's email came in, I saw it and said, I'm going to get back to that. And then life just kind of between work and then Arlie's graduation, I just didn't get back to it. So Nico, I apologize.
Future prevention.
Future
No
prevention.
worries at all.
Boy, that's a tough one. I think in the future, what I should have done is thought about how busy my week was going to be and
Yeah.
suggest that maybe we push that out a week.
I think you could have just said, look, I'm jammed. I don't think I have time to do this, and I'd like to make a new agreement.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about this, but that's the reality. And so I'm gonna ask you to renegotiate with me, and we just won't do this.
Yep. Yep.
Then are we okay now?
Are we okay, Nico?
Oh yeah, it just got up from the ground, falling forward. No, there's no worries. We'll get to that.
Thank you. I
Just
appreciate that.
postpone it.
By the way, from my perspective, if you don't do the exercise, I don't think it's a totally essential thing. We had a little fun with the video. So if everybody's okay, we'll move into probably my favorite section, the blue one.
I'm actually looking forward to this because I need to get the teams at work to 100% commitment to start meeting the agreements that they don't realize they have.
This is for me the really powerful piece, and addressing unfortunate realities. I think this is so essential. This helped us move through the house burning down very effectively. And then finally, this idea of 100% commitment, and it's a state of focus is what it is. A lot of people make priority lists for things to do. That never worked for me because it takes a lot of time, and it put attention on things I didn't want attention on. So what I just did is ignore things that are less important and let me focus on what matters. And I'll give you some examples of that. It's a state of laser-like focus on what you want. And what it does is it alters perception. Perception is very malleable, and this changes how you see things. And even Larissa can speak to this, but a little story here about this. I was divorced and I was single for about 10 years. And it kind of surprised me because I was reasonably comfortable married to a person I didn't like. And I thought in the marketplace of people, I should be an attractive target, and nobody showed up. So I had a friend of mine, a somatic psychology teacher, and I said to him, Gay, I said, I'm kind of surprised at this. He said, you want to come have lunch with me in Colorado Springs? I'll explain what's going on here. So that was intriguing. I drove there. He and I sat down, had a lunch together, and he said, the problem is your perception. And he said, the thing is that you talk about being remarried, and if you ever got serious about it, you'd see the person. But as long as you're a dilettante and you're uncertain, they're not going to show up. And I thought, that's an interesting idea. I never thought of things like this. So I reflected on it, and I said, yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in this. I'm actually quite ambivalent about this. A part of me would like to be remarried. Part of me likes my single life. So I said, I'm going to become 100% committed to this and do this. And so the question I asked myself is, who do I have the most shared interest with? And I think this is a really important piece of any relationship. I use this a lot. I had a friend, an ex-friend of mine from NASA contacted me the other day and wanted to get together for dinner. And I said, no, I don't think so. And I said, we don't have any shared interest anymore. I don't work with NASA. I don't really. Another thing I learned from Japanese is that they're very careful about entering relationships, because when they're in them, they have to tend to them. So I have shared interests with Japanese people, and especially Japanese women. I joined a Japanese ladies traveling club, and for some years I would travel to Japan and stay in their houses, and married women, and they would come stay with me in Boulder. And I thought, these are people that I really like on many levels. And it would be difficult to say this. I mean, I don't think there's anything that's you could quantify about a commonality among Americans or Canadians, but Japan is a very organized society. And so I decided that I'm not going to find her in Boulder, Colorado. I needed to go to Japan and find her. So I closed my business and I went over there for 3 months. And I went to a small town called Yamagata because I was the president of the Boulder Yamagata Friendship Society. And this was a big mistake. I should have been in Tokyo. And I sort of counted on friends of mine. I've got several friends from Harvard who were CEOs or COOs of big Japanese companies. And in Japan, as you go up in management, you're expected to care for people more and more. And arranging marriages is quite common for them. So they fixed me up with some very attractive ladies. We had a nice time together. Of course, you don't meet without a chaperone. They call it omiai there. And we talked, and they said, gee, they're very interested in this. I'd like to get together again in a couple of months. And I thought, it's not going to work. The pace of romance is going to be too slow here for me. And so I pondered this. And by the way, what these symbols are about is the society is very scientific, very technical. Junko watches TV Japan a lot. Half the shows are science shows. If you go into a eyeglass store in Japan and want to buy dark glasses, they'll ask you about the transmission spectrum and show you graphs. In the US, they'll say, do you want green or gray? As far as religion goes, they have two, and one is Shintoism, which is basically a lot like Native American. And so what happened is Shinto was the first religion. It's basically worship of nature and the sun. The Buddhists came along later and said, we want a piece of the action. And being neither religion has fighting in its background. So the deal they struck, they said to the Buddhists, you can have birth and death and we take everything else. So that's how that works. And I'm very comfortable from a religious belief with both of these. Buddhism, that neither have the kind of doctrine that Christianity has, for example. So that worked for me. And they're a very polite society, very considerate society. I like that in people. So, and the food, if I had to choose one meal in the world, it'd be a Japanese kaiseki dinner. It's unbelievable. It's typically, this is what it looks like, is a 10-course meal. You get it at places like these inns or ryokans. So I'm very comfortable with the people. I like the whole place. I love traveling there. I've lived in Japan on and off. And so I decided that that's where my wife to be. So start everything with address the unfortunate reality, and that is that she's not going to be in Boulder. The second thing is become 100% committed. And at that point, it seemed like a very, with this mindset shift of GLAD group and Love group, ran the storyline, I will find her. And so I closed the 4D company for 3 months and moved over there, went to Japan. So after about 6 weeks, it was apparent I'd made two mistakes. One is living in Yamagata, a small town. I'd planned to take Japanese language lessons. They didn't have any. The people who were very social with me when I was there many times in my job as president of the society, they were comfortable speaking English, and when they're alone, they weren't. So I happened to visit a friend of mine in Tokyo, And she said, my daughter has been this traveling troupe called Up With People. It's a thing used to be sponsored by Toyota, go around the world doing plays. The world headquarters was in Louisville. I'd never heard of it. So she's got 2 free tickets. Would you like to go to the concert tomorrow night? I said, sure. So we went. And I talked to her quite a bit because she learned English pretty fluently, spending a year in this international troupe. She was there with her best friend from Mito City named Atsuko. And Atsuko's English wasn't as good, but we talked a lot during the breaks. So the thing ended at 11:30 at night, and I'm out in the street walking in the crowd in Tokyo. And she runs up to me and says, Charlie, the last train home leaves at midnight out of Ueno Station. We're not sure how to get there. At the time I was in Tokyo enough, I knew exactly how to do this. I said, we'll take the Ginza Line train, subway train. And I can tell you once we board the train exactly when we're going to get to the station. And the train station is quite a distance from the subway station. So we're gonna have to run. And they had 2 small children with them, 2 small boys. I said, give me the boys, I'll run, I'll carry them under my arms and run. And we all 3 ran to the train. So ran to the train, they jumped on, just made the train, and they're riding along. And my friend's daughter says to Atsuko, where's your younger boy? He says, oh, I'm really lucky. I have an unmarried older sister who takes care of him. And she said, unmarried older sister, Charlie. So they got home and called Junko on the phone and said, we found your husband. And she said, who? So an American. She hung up. That's a longer story. And I said, well, you know, we tried to meet in Tokyo in the airport. It didn't work out. So I got back home and I thought, well, you know, she was willing to fly to Tokyo to meet me. In those days, that was like a $500 air ticket from Sapporo, where she lived. I thought anyone's willing to spend $500 to meet me. This might be something here. So I contacted my friend's daughter and said, let's see if we can get her to come to Boulder. So I communicated directly with her on faxes in those days. Email was not in common use yet. And said, you know, why don't you come to Boulder if you're interested in all this, and we'll have some fun. And she was hemming and hawing. So finally her sister, who'd met me at the concert, said to her, let's go to Boulder instead of our vacation to Italy, and I'll bring the boys. And so just let me know when you got your air ticket. So Junko said to her, I've got my air ticket booked. She said, go ahead and get yours. And she said, I'm not going. So I go down to Denver Airport to meet somebody that I know nothing about, never seen a photograph of. I had only knew one thing. She was a dental hygienist, which even wrong. She's a dentist. And I'm there with a sign in Denver Airport. And the flight that came in went through Los Angeles, so had lots of Asians on it. So I'm standing there kind of going, hope that's her, hope that's not. So she comes off and we get in the car, and I'm not sure what to think about this. And I'd put on some local country music by a guy named Chuck Pyle. I thought she might like some local color. Made it clear she didn't like that. At that time, I had a 7 Series BMW with a CD changer in the back. So I pushed a button and a area from La Traviata came on, which she loved, and that's been our favorite song. So we spent a week in Boulder. I did everything she hated. I took her up to Brainerd Lake snowshoeing, and I miscalculated how far this was. I'd done this, the time I was doing a lot of backcountry skiing, and backcountry skiing seems kind of slow, but compared to snowshoes, you're really moving. So I got us out in the middle of nowhere. A blizzard came in. We had to sort of fight for our lives to get back to the car, and so forth and so on. Anyway, she was here in February, and I like these, as you know, I like these red winter sunrises. So next to last day before she's going back, I said, let's get up and go watch the sun come up. So we got up in the dark, and we went and got some Starbucks coffee or something, and I drove to the parking lot at NCAR in Boulder. And we're watching the sun, and the first thing I see is this big red glow over Denver, because it's not cloudy here often. The skies are pretty clear. And I said, oh, damn, we're not going to see a sunrise. Then the little ringlet of clouds opened up, a little tiny hole in the clouds, and sunbeams came down right down on the two of us. So I said, that's a sign. And she went back to Japan. We visited each other a couple other times, and we got married a year. I went to Sapporo to see her, and we got married first in Boulder and second in Japan. And that's our marriage photograph, year and a half later. And we're on 22 years and going quite happily. So that's about the power of changing your perception with 100% commitment. So attention to unfortunate realities. This creates a context of creativity. And then, so what do you do with these realities? You do one of two things. You get rid of them, dispose of them, or you adjust to accommodate them, one or the other. And Ray Dalio, he runs the largest hedge fund in the world. I'm a fan of the guy for two reasons. One is he went broke in 1980 and recovered from that. And I've been broke 3 times, understand that, and recovered. And the second is he devotes his later life to helping people. And he put these life principles out. And life principle number 1, embrace reality and deal with it, especially the realities we wish weren't true. Then this idea of 100% commitment. And this is about focus on what you want. I was working with a sports team in the Netherlands some years ago, and they said, we call this perception regulation. I said, what's that mean? They said, well, we think of things in these concentric spheres, and on the field, we're not aware of anything except the ball and the other players. That's all. The next level of awareness goes out to, for example, the referees who interrupt us once in a while, and then to our teammates on the bench, then to the fans in the stands. But while we're playing, that's all there is in the world, is the other players and this ball. Andy Grove is a sort of hero of mine. He's deceased now. He swam some river to escape Nazism, became CEO of Intel, and he called his people together and said, the Japanese are hammering us on the cost of manufacturing RAM, random access memory. That's all that Intel made in those days. And then he brought his management team, said, what are we going to do about this? And they said, no problem, we can beat them. He thanked them, and he brought 3 of his most trusted people into his office and said, the unfortunate reality is we cannot beat the Japanese on cost. If we try, the board will fire us, and rightly so. Let's imagine we're the people they hired to replace us. Well, what would we do? I like this too, get rid of the baggage. Out of that session, they decided to go into microprocessors. And as you know, they dominate the world market in microprocessors to this day. So I'd like to share a personal experience with you about drinking and driving. As you know, people sometimes have problems with the police on their way home after a social session with family or friends. This year I was out for evening at a party and had several martinis and a bottle of rather nice wine. Although relaxed, I still had the common sense to know I was slightly over the limit. That's why I did something I've never done before. I took a taxi home. On the way home, there's a police roadblock. Since it was a taxi, they waved it past, and I arrived home safely without incident. These roadblocks can be everywhere, and I realized how lucky I was to have chosen to take a taxi. That was a real surprise to me because I'd never driven a taxi before. I don't know where I got it. Now it's in my garage. I don't know what to do with it. So if you want to borrow it, give me a call.
Okay.
So a pitcher reaches a crucial point in a baseball game. He faces the batter and says, clear the mechanism. That's his term for moving into this focused state. He then says, hello, Mike, and nothing exists except him, his pitch, and the batter. He throws, the batter misses with a strike.
and mechanism. Hello, Mike.
Okay, let's get on our feet and take our little break. Okay. Felt good. So you address unfortunate realities with a mindset of 100% commitment. Remember, mindset is combination of emotions and storylines, effective emotions, and there's 5 groups, green storylines. This is a moving piece. This is a psychologist who was put in a concentration camp in World War II. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. So careful to what you wish for. A married couple in the early 60s were celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary in a quiet, romantic restaurant. Suddenly, a tiny fairy appeared on their table and said, "For being such a wonderful couple, I will grant you each a wish." "Ooh, I want to travel around the world with my darling husband," said the wife. The fairy moved her magic wand, and abracadabra, 2 tickets for the new QE2 appeared in her hands. Now it was the husband's turn. He said, "Well, this is all very romantic, but I'm sorry, my love. My wish is to have a wife 30 years younger than me." Well, the wife and the fairy were deeply disappointed, but a wish is a wish. So the fairy made a circle with her magic wand, abracadabra. The husband was 92 years old. So this is powerful stuff. Careful what you wish for. The moral of the story, men are ungrateful idiots and fairies are females. So how do we deviate from accurate perceptions? I think the most common thing is confirmation bias. This is where you choose out of reality the set of things that corroborate your beliefs. We do this all the time. You can just watch any partisan diatribe on anything, you can see it. It's a big problem with airline crashes. People don't see the real reality. And I use this for proposal wins. I did this example with TRW and JWST. What I did was I induced confirmation bias in the customer and made them want to pick them. The second is the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is really interesting. This is about the fact that when you're totally incompetent, your confidence is very high. You may see this in a certain prominent politician in the U.S. I won't name who. You probably know. And I had the same experience with physics or playing a musical instrument. You start I used to play guitar, and you pick up a guitar and think, I can do this. Then you say, holy crap, this is hard. Then as you practice and work, you sort of get to where you get discouraged, and then at some point you finally start to master the thing and you feel pretty good about it. 2 things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe. Projection. This is where we project our motivations to other people. Remember what percent of the time these are wrong? 95%. So when I worry a bit about us making a war with China, because we make wars all the time, and we're going to imagine this is what they're trying to do. They might not be. And then our personality affects how we see the world, our color. has a big effect. Then there's inattentional blindness. So you're probably familiar with this video of the gorilla in a suit that comes in and dribbles a basketball and nobody sees it. Attention is a very limited resource, and we are drawn to rapidly moving objects. So right now, I can not take my eyes off that moving ball on the screen. And this is an evolutionary thing again. I mean, we had to eat, and being able to notice movement. In fact, just up in Rocky Mountain Park yesterday, there were elk that I didn't see until they moved, and then they were quite obvious. And this is why we track tweets and can't see climate change, things that move slowly.
The brain is constantly bombarded by far more information than it can handle. If we tried to process all of it, we'd be completely paralyzed. As a result, we have to attend to only a small part of what's in front of us at any given moment. Sometimes attention can fail and we lose focus. This is what happens in what we call inattentional blindness.
Pay attention. You're about to be tested. For this game, you get to be the referee and judge whether the kicker is able to put the football between those two yellow uprights, 20 yards away. Tracking a small moving object at a distance might be difficult, so watch the ball closely.
Spirit, let's hear it. Spirit, let's hear it. S-P-I-R-I-T, Spirit.
So, was the field goal good or not? As the replay shows, it's good. Pretty easy, right? But while you were watching the kick, did you happen to notice which cheerleaders took off their tops? If you're looking for the rewind button, don't worry. We'll do it for you. Yep, there they are. While you were zeroed in on the kick, you missed 3 cheerleaders stripping down at the bottom of the screen. Don't be surprised if you missed it. We took advantage of a loophole in your brain. If you could rewind real life, you'd be shocked at how often inattentional blindness causes you to miss things happening right in front of your eyes.
So, you know, I did a lot of work in Asia, and they talk about their great philosophers, people like Lao Tzu, people like that. So we have philosophers in the U.S. too. This is philosophy from near the part of the country I live in.
See, now that's great. Your life makes sense to you. What's so funny?
You city folk, you worry about a lot of shit, don't you?
Shit.
Yeah.
My wife basically told me she doesn't want me around.
Is she redhead?
Well, I'm just saying.
How old are you? 38.
39.
Yeah. You all come off here about the same age, same problems. Spend about 50 weeks a year getting knots in your rope, and then you think 2 weeks up here will untime for you. None of you get it. Do you know what the secret of life is?
No, what?
This.
Your finger?
One thing. Just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean shit.
That's great, but what's the one thing?
That's what you gotta figure out.
So if I could tell you one thing that would make your life and team successful, would be this: find the outcomes you're committed to realizing and focus accordingly. I know this now. Every man gives his life for what he is committed to. Every woman gives her life for what she is committed to. Sometimes people are committed to little or nothing, so they give their lives to little or nothing. One life is all we have, and we live it as we are committed to living it, and then it's gone. But to surrender who you are and live without commitment is more terrible, even more terrible than dying young. So here's what happens. When you're inspired by some great purpose, all your thoughts break their bonds, your consciousness expands in every direction, and you discover yourself to be a greater person than you ever dreamed possible. This is the focused mindset of 100% commitment. So people ask me, how do I know if I'm committed? And I say, look at how things look to you. If I give the example with food, and Larissa, you can chime in on this if you want. But if you asked me 10 years ago, if I went into a cafeteria for lunch, I was less than 100% committed to eating healthy. And so this looked like a much better choice to me than the salad. Then I changed my mindset to be 100% committed to diet. And now this looks more appetizing. There's no force. Larissa, you want to talk about your experience with this?
Yeah, I'm not sure how many people would be interested in my personal experience, but I just want to confirm what Charlie said. You can do it with 100% commitment. And in my case, it was due to my certain health issues. I had to make an immediate switch to vegan, fat-free, oil-free diet. And
Just
I
let that
was,
sink in for a second. Vegan, fat-free, oil-free.
yeah,
I mean, what that leaves is just about fruits and vegetables.
that's right.
without
That's right.
anything. Okay?
That's right.
It's-
I cannot drink coffee or tea or anything, so I basically drink water and but I'm enjoying it. So I am truly, I don't know, it's just, and my children even surprised that we didn't cancel any barbecue parties, any of those things, because it doesn't matter to me. All these very delicious smells and all of that, it just means nothing to me. So basically, you can be happy if you have true 100% commitment. So that's but honestly, this was the first time when I'm experienced it, and it's just a testament to Charlie's teaching, because I as a good student of Charlie, I can tell I'm proud that it just really what I do is really confirming that theory. Thank you.
So when I'm in workshops, I'm 100% committed. I am not aware of anything outside that room. I don't use my phone. It's put away and turned off. I don't think about anything else. I'm there attending to the students, attending to the material, making them feel connected to me so they feel included. 100% of my attention so they feel appreciated. That's entirely where I am. And it's a very four-dimensional process. The students have got to believe that I care about them. And Nate, I think this was the best part of my course at CU, as the students got it, that I cared about them first, not my stupid research. In relationship with them, with everybody in the room, to creatively respond to new things that come up. And to be disciplined and organized, get through the material, start on time, end on time. So it's a very 4D thing to focus on. Usually Junko travels with me. At the end of the day, I go rejoin with her. We have a beer, a glass of wine together. And at that moment, I'm totally focused on her. My mind is not anyplace else. It takes about 15 minutes and we are reconnected again. Then I might just read a book or something for the rest of the evening. I'm not committed to anything. I don't do it all the time, but that's how it works. I like airplanes. I fly a lot, and used to fly a lot, I should say, and a lot of long haul international flights. And I go up in the cockpit and talk to the flight crew. I tell them a little bit about my background. They're always welcome me into the cockpit and talk about the flight. Sometimes give me the flight plan to take to my seat. And I asked them, I said, this can be very difficult hand-eye thing to do. You're landing in airports with crosswinds, and sometimes instructions aren't clear, and changing runways and all these things. How do you do it so completely reliably? And they said, the answer is that we're 100% committed when we grab the controls for that final piece we do manually. He said, at that point, there's nothing else on my mind. And so, and part of this is what they call the sterile cockpit. So United would frequently put on air traffic control, especially if I asked them to do it. And I'm listening as they come in to land, usually on, say, a flight to China. there's not much conversation after we leave US mainland. Actually, during cruise, there's not much at all. As they come in, they got a lot of vectoring. But before that, I hear the seat chime go off, and the crew will say, return to your seat, put your seatbelt on, etc. What that chime means is that they do not contact the cockpit for anything unless it's a true emergency. And typically, these long hauls have a flight crew of 4, 2 are sleeping, and they also often even take me into the sleeping quarters. And the 2 that are sleeping get up, all 4 are in the cockpit. One person's driving, one person's monitoring. That's how all flights are done. The other 2 people are just looking out the window, looking at the instruments. And if you ask them in that period, there's nothing but the airplane, 100% committed, 100% focused. So this is an interesting equation. It's a statement of physics that can explain everything on Earth, and likely will for thousands of years. I call it the theory of everything here, but physicists call this the standard model, and I'm not going to try and explain this. I don't even understand all this. This is special notations, complicated differential equations, operators, functions, but it's got everything in it. So what interests me is that even though this explains everything on Earth, it explains less than 5% of the universe. We have no idea what 95% of the universe is made of. 26% is called dark matter, from a Caltech guy named Fred Zwicky, later refined by astronomer Vera Rubin. And basically what they've done is they measure what they call rotation curves of matter in galaxies. And you can calculate the centrifugal force, and you can look at the distribution of matter. And the matter should distribute like this, but instead it's like this. And it should, what we understand of gravity, it should fly apart, and it doesn't. So he called it dark matter. I don't think that's accurate. I think it's actually, we don't understand gravity very well, is what my opinion on this. And that was quite amazing to know we need 5 times more invisible matter than everything we're able to reserve. But this is even more incredible. It's called dark energy. So if you throw a ball into the air, what happens is that it starts with a lot of kinetic energy, and the gravity converts it to potential energy. The kinetic energy goes to 0, and it falls back down. So when I was in graduate school, what we believed about the universe was that we had this Big Bang explosion. That still looks quite valid. Like throwing a ball in the air, it's expanding very rapidly. We can calculate that and see that. Hubble showed this back in 1930 or something. So the belief was the universe is going to come back and collapse on itself, just like throwing the ball in the air. Well, what turned out is something quite odd. About 5 billion years ago, the universe is about 13.8 billion years old. So the universe stopped slowing down and started speeding up. Nobody knows what this is. So this is a kind of problem that caused me to be interested in astrophysics, this kind of thing. This is to a scientist, this is really cool stuff. So, and things like, and so what I believed was that every time you look at a physical phenomenon in a completely new way, you get something entirely unexpected. This is the story of quantum mechanics or relativity. And there are things that interested me, like gamma ray bursts. You get as much energy from a gamma ray burst in a few seconds as the sun puts out in this 10 billion year lifetime. So my idea was, if we can, that there's a new physics embodied in there. If we can make the measurement accurately enough, we can figure out what it is. And the problem is that most measurements are made at a single wavelength, visible light for Hubble or X-rays for other instruments. And you can model this with one wavelength to something that looks plausible. Doesn't require any new physics. But if this is something, and by the way, there's no other way to replicate this stuff on Earth. The Large Hadron Collider doesn't even come close to this kind of thing. So I had the idea that if you could measure at all the wavelengths, all the energy emitters, and build a theoretical model, that you could require a new physics. And this is the electromagnetic spectrum. These are all the wavelengths of light that can travel through space. Radio waves you're familiar with, microwaves and microwave oven, infrared. Everything glows in infrared. If we had infrared vision, everything at room temperature is glowing. Visible light, Hubble works here. Ultraviolet, X-rays, you probably think mostly of X-rays, medical X-rays. Finally, gamma rays, which come out of nuclear explosions. So, and then so there's radio telescopes to look at the radio waves. That's covered pretty well. Hubble looks at the visible and ultraviolet. And we had a mission in play, Gamma Ray Observatory, that actually I worked on as a scientist when I was a scientist, that can look at the sky in gamma rays. So what's missing is the X-ray regime and the infrared. So I got the idea that I became director. I got the idea to try and do those missions. And the first thing I encountered was that every day I'm getting lobbied by a representative from one or the other to do their mission next. And the reason was that they believed that these things took so long. Hubble took 15 years to build. Whichever one went next, the next one would not come in their lifetimes. And that would make it, so to me, this didn't make any sense, because if I did one or the other, it'd probably be impossible to do the other one. And so I got the idea to put together a program that included both. And the problem was, given the growth rate of the NASA budget, there would not be new money for this. To pay for this, I had to take it away from other people, which is always difficult. And my credibility was shot. Hubble had overrun many, many times. Hubble was originally supposed to be done for 400 million, ended up costing 1.5 billion, which would be 5 billion in today's dollars. And I tried to sell the idea of these infrared and X-ray telescopes. The problem is the people who make decisions in the government, at Office of Management and Budget in Congress, they're typically lawyers. They every time I started to explain some piece of this science, their eyes would glaze over and they lost immediate interest. Some said I was on a fool's errand, and I need to refocus from selling to marketing. So the difference here, I'm fond of sort of joking, not entirely joking, that I spent 16 weeks in a residential program at Harvard. And the only thing I learned was the difference between selling and marketing. Selling is where you take something you want someone to buy and try and push them to buy it. And marketing is where you find out what somebody needs and offer that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the story here. And what we're going to do next, I'm going to have some time for everybody to talk about what's on your mind with the material we've covered. And what we're going to do next is describe what happened next in this story of me trying to make measurements across the whole spectrum and how I did that. So I'm going to go out of the shared screen mode, but everybody on the screen, have open mic for our last 9 or so minutes about anything that I've gotten you to think about with this material.
Charlie, while I'm still on air, I can disappear any moment, but I'm using the kind of thinking, which is far removed from physics. It's in the social domain, but I'm usually blown away by the similarities and challenges, and you can say thinking out of the box and so on. But as you were explaining it just now, I'm facing the same kind of challenges, but if I recall your story and what I've learned, it means a lot to me facing the realities are in the social domain.
Good, thank you. And Larissa, you talked about your actual experience of this with food, and you've reiterated this to me repeatedly. This has been no effort for you once you made the mindset shift.
Yeah, it's amazing how it works. In fact, it was the first time in my life when I really experienced that scale of change And I realize with my 100% commitment, it is possible. Yeah.
Larissa, I'm curious, like
Sure.
when you just kind of walking through like those steps of and dealing with the unfortunate realities and getting to 100% commitment. I would love a little more color of like what were you 100% committing to, and like what was behind that. I mean, it's one thing to say I'm 100% committed to this way of eating, but I have to imagine it's much deeper than that. That there's like all this reason behind it and is coming from glad emotions. So I'm just curious of.
Sure. Of course. I'm happy to share any details that you might be interested in. But generally speaking, it came down to the bottom line, basically. For me, it's just I'm so very much committed to my children, and to my husband, and to my grandchildren, that I realize that if I'm not going to take it seriously and not 99% commitment, not just fuzzy 100% in and out 100%, so to speak, then I'm not going to have an opportunity to live longer. And I really want to see my grandkids grow up. I wanna make my husband happy. I wanna see our kids they are grown up adults and both successful, knock on the wood, but I just wanna have an opportunity to be alive and to be functioning. So and whenever I heard that after the conversation with my doctor, with my cardiologist, I basically dived into scholarly work. I read a lot of scientific publication, and I realized what a 100% commitment would give me in that case. So but even in those publications, it was stated that it's very rare for people. There is a way out in my condition, but it's very rare. It's basically according to the New England Medicine Journal, it's just 1% of people who can really do that kind of thing. And I just challenged myself. I said, I'm glad at least there is a way out. So it would be too difficult if somebody would told me that there is no way out, doesn't matter what you do. But in my case, there is a way out. It's just it's accepted and stated by the medical professionals that it's very difficult to do, but so what? I took Charlie's teaching to the heart, and I just realized that there is a way out. I'm not saying that I'm sort of equally brave as 1% of all the patients who are really using this technique, but I give it a try and it works out fine. So I guess it's a long answer to your short question. My motivation was just to stay alive, and according to the research, if I would be truly 100% commitment, have 100%, not in and out, not 99%, but truly 100%, then I can live a very productive life. And it's it's basically that's what it is. Yeah, I went through a very extensive testing in the medical school here at the University of Massachusetts, and yes, they said that's amazing. That what I do. They said it's just an amazing in terms of how I can make that kind of commitment, but that's what basically a centerpiece in my life. And I thought, from that point, I would only be concerned and only think about this all day long, so to speak. No, it just became my new routine. And basically, it was a little bit of shock at the beginning when I woke up next morning and I realized I couldn't eat nothing that I was used to. Yeah. So it's just like, okay, water, fruits and vegetables. so but you can do it. You can do it. And by the way, not to really occupy the floor too long, but I found like-minded people online, and they shared their experiences with me, and they shared different recipes, and apparently you can really cook very delicious meals, but it's only based on water and fruits and vegetables. And there are and if anyone is up to that challenge, I'm happy to share it with you. So, okay, I want to give at least last 2 minutes for someone else. Thank you, Tanya, and for your interest. Thank you. Anyone wants to take a last 2 minutes? All right, since nobody is talking, then let's just me continue. Let me just say thank you, thank you. I realized how much it really means to me to meet with all of you every week. So last week, I was not able to make it because my boss at NASA really managed to have monthly meetings on Tuesdays at the same time when Charlie's class. But I informed Charlie about that, and I hope that this really will okay with Charlie and with all of you. So, but I watched the recording, and I realized that watching a recording really means a lot to me as well. I heard your voices, I saw your beautiful faces, and I'm really enjoying taking that class. So thank you to all for being there live and virtually or in recording. So it really means a lot to me, and I feel that you all are passionate about this as well.
So I'm gonna